I'm here at the 2015 Natural Resource Symposium held by Sprott and Stansberry Research, and I'm very happy to be joined now by William Bonner. He is the founder of Agora Inc. Thank you, William, so much for joining me.
Pleasure being here.
William, you did a talk this morning, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and you sort of burst my bubble because you started the talk by saying, I've been wrong for 40 years.
Yeah.
Now, I've been following you since 2005, so in my mind, you'd only been wrong for 10 years.
Well, you started late. If you'd started earlier, you could have followed me for a much longer time.
Actually, a lot of us have been wrong during that whole time, so I want to talk about that a little bit, but I found your talk very entertaining and enlightening. Agora, you said, has around 2.5 million subscribers
We
at
have
this point?
2.5 million worldwide. We're in 10 different countries in 5 different languages, and it's a very different medium, which I think people are just beginning to we're just beginning to understand what it is.
Right, and it's I guess you have a diverse offering. You've embraced the technology, which has helped. But the thing you talked about was, with that many subscribers, with that tremendous reach, Agora should be a household name, and it's not.
Well, we're kind of we're an under the radar kind of company because it's very private. All of our publications are private. They don't appear on newsstands anywhere. We don't have any TV stations. We're not public media. So we have a relationship with 2.5 million people, but each one of those is a private relationship passing by email. We don't even have any big websites. We do have websites, but it's not by websites that people know us. They know us because we're in touch with them by email.
Right, and I guess a lot of these publications, they sort of operate independently. One might not even know they're dealing with Agora because
That's
so
right.
many offerings.
That's right, because Agora, as it means in Greek, Agora is the marketplace. And we are the marketplace for ideas. And naturally, there are lots of ideas. But the difference between our ideas and the public narrative is that our ideas are not the alternative. There are different ways of looking at things. And in the financial markets, we know that if you don't look at things differently from most people, you can't possibly make any money, because the way most people look at things is the market itself. So in order to do better, you've got to do something different.
That's right. Why would you expect an extraordinary result if you're doing average?
Same thing, yes.
Now, that sort of is the crux of it, right? You're sort of a thinking man's publisher. You publish alternative ideas, new ideas.
We try to. We do, and that's why we have so many. And that's why we are not visible, because there's so many different ideas. We have different. Each analyst comes up with his own opinion about what's going on, and that opinion he gives directly to his subscribers, his followers, his readers. There is no one view that we have as a group. We have lots of different views.
Right, and sometimes that seems contradictory, but it's consistent with the independent philosophy that you have.
Because nobody knows. Nobody really understands what's going on, and nobody knows what the future holds. So what we're always trying to figure it out, but figuring it out is a process of coming up with ideas, figuring them out, studying them, trying to understand what's going on and where it leads. And nobody has a monopoly on that. We have lots of different people doing it, and we do our best.
Right, now let's talk about that public narrative for a little bit, because I laughed out loud when you talked about that. You were talking about, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and why is it that this public narrative seems so exceedingly stupid?
Well,
we all laughed when you said that.
It is, yeah, we laugh about it because if you're the public narrative, there's an expression, and it's called the newspaper of record. And a newspaper of record is, for example, the Washington Post, the New York Times. In France, it's Le Monde. In England, it's the Times. That newspaper of record is the public narrative of life in the country at the time. And if you read that, you find out what people think, or what they're supposed to think. And every right-thinking citizen of a country has to be informed. That's what they say. If you're a good citizen, you need to inform yourself. And you inform yourself by reading the public journals. You read the newspapers of record. But in order to have a narrative, to have an explanation of what goes on in a country that will appeal to a whole mass of people, a great mass of the average person. And for politics, 51% in order to be elected, that has to be very, very simple. And it has to be simple-minded. Real life is not simple. Real life is not simple-minded. Real life is full of ambiguity, paradox,
Right.
and nuance. But in order to have a public narrative that we can all say, oh, that's what's going on, then it needs to be simplified, stripped down of all the things that make it real. And so it ends up being exceedingly stupid. And we see that in politics, the political discourse, if you think at all, and you pay attention to what the candidates say, you're appalled, because you think, what's the matter with these people? It doesn't work that way. But a public discourse has to be simple, and it has to be, as I say, stupid. Stupid's not exactly the right word, but it has to be simple-minded.
Yeah, and I always found it strange that the media will take, and the politicians will take an important issue, but insist that we have to have a national conversation on it.
Oh, yes,
Whereas a personal conversation, a private conversation would suffice. We're talking about marriage, I'm
Yes,
talking about
exactly.
race relations and things
Very,
like that.
Very good, exactly.
Why do we need a national
Well,
conversation?
We have a national conversation now on transgender issues.
Exactly.
And I'm totally indifferent to transgender issues, but they're private issues.
Right.
Why is the public involved? But anyhow, the public is involved because people like this public narrative. It gives politicians something to do, and it also draws money, because now we have a position on something. Right. And this is true, especially in foreign policy, where we have a position on what happens in every country on the face of the planet, even though most Americans, like 51%, don't know where the country is, have no idea what language they speak there, have no idea the politics, the culture, the art, the history, anything to do with that country, and yet we must have a public narrative, a public position, so the country can say, yeah, we're for this group, we're against this group. And by the way, in the Middle East, it changes all the time. Now we're supporting one group, and then we find, whoa, they're supporting somebody else, and now we have to support somebody else. And this public narrative then draws the resources of the country. Because not only do we have to have an opinion about it, we have to do something. So now we have a whole body of opinion, a whole industry of activists working to do something, working to liberate, actually not to liberate's the wrong word, to draw resources from the working part of the country, the productive part of the country, towards this sort of activity, which I call zombie activity because it's not productive.
They're liberating our capital from the rightful
from
the rightful owner.
Yeah, we would like to put it.
Okay, I want to move on actually to this bubble we see brewing up. You talk a lot about credit, the credit-fueled economy, and you gave many examples actually of just prices that seem absolutely insane. And I'm talking about collectibles and certain trophy real estate assets. Can you talk a little bit about that? It seems insane.
Well, the effect, which was predicted by the economist Newt Wicksell 100 years ago, the effect of lowering rates and keeping them lower than what he called the natural rate, is to draw money into existing assets. Because the economy doesn't, well, it's a long explanation, but the short answer is that when you do that, people say, why should I take a gamble? Why should I risk my time and money trying to create new assets? Because all I have to do is invest in existing assets. Because the interest rate is lower than the natural rate, and you're going to make money investing in an existing asset. So what happens is money goes into existing stocks and bonds, and the prices, and real estate, and the prices go up. And so that's what we've seen. We've seen a huge run-up in equity, real estate, and bonds, which has caused lots of, again, it's a transfer of resources. This is an interesting point, if you don't mind me taking a second.
Please do. No,
because
please do.
if you have an economy, and you imagine two guys on an island, and they each produce 2 fish, and they each have 2 ounces of gold, and then one of them finds another ounce of gold. The money supply has just gone up by 50%. But how does that have any effect on the supply of fish? Has none whatsoever. Well, what it does, it means there's more currency and less for the same quantity of fish. It doesn't have any effect at all. But what it does is it transfers it doesn't create resources, it doesn't add to resources, but it does transfer them, because the guy now who found the ounce of gold, he's got twice as much purchasing power as the guy who still has 1 ounce of gold. So it has a big effect on transfer, but no effect, zero, except some effect at the margin by tricking people into thinking there is more purchasing power. So you get this phenomenon where the increases to the money supply transfer real resources from the people who earn them to the people who get the money. And in an economy where the money goes through the banking system to Wall Street, the people who get the money are the rich, fundamentally, the people who have assets.
You know, I love that Robinson Crusoe analogy, and you pulled it off even using specie as an example of money, and that is sort of the best form of money. I mean, the person who found it could maybe attach it to a chain and wear it as jewelry, or
Exactly,
repair a radio with it because it's a conductor. But if you go to paper, then it really illustrates it.
Well, exactly. I use the species just to show that money has no value outside of an economy. It's the economy that gives value to money. It's not the other way around. And in today's world, if you listen to the Fed and you listen to modern economists, they seem to think that adding money improves the economy, which it does not. It can't.
If Robinson Crusoe is there and Helicopter Ben comes in with his helicopter and his bag of money, Crusoe has more use for the helicopter than he does for the money.
Well, I guess you could use the money for starting fires, but nothing else, because there's nothing to buy. By the way,
yeah.
If you really could create wealth by printing money, Zimbabwe today would be the richest country on the planet.
Yeah, and many nations before them, I'm sure. You put an interesting chart up. It was basically debt-adjusted GDP.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes, yeah.
so we looked at the GDP, and then you took the same curve and you adjusted it if you adjusted for debt. And I imagine this is basically what real GDP is supposed to be when they deflate it.
Yes.
But because they're looking at CPI, they never really
Yes.
deflate it quite enough, do they?
Yes, that's right.
But you
get
did
a
it.
deflated view.
And the result was extraordinary, right? In
It
terms
took-
of what happened to GDP.
It took $10 trillion out of the economy. And that's, I think, and it's sort of what's going to happen, because sooner or later, every increase in debt is followed by a decrease in debt sooner or later somehow. And when that happens, that debt-fueled economy, $10 trillion worth, is going to disappear. So the real economy, the value of the real economy, the economy that counts, the economy that we can afford, is only about $8 trillion.
Right. And you're kind of a little bit harsh on debt in your talk. But I think the real problem is not necessarily that it's debt-fueled, but the debt is coming involuntarily from the savings of people who don't really know that they're investing in bonds and sovereign bonds and stocks and stuff like that, because it's coming through inflation.
It's very complicated because when you get away from real currency, and you say when you get to paper currency, then you have to ask yourself, what does that mean? When they give you more currency, what does that mean? And they lend it to you. So the Federal Reserve creates money out of nowhere and lends it to somebody. So what has actually happened? It got something from nowhere, so it has no value whatsoever, and it gave it to somebody. Now that person doesn't have anything more than he had before, except he has a claim on other people's assets.
Right.
And that's really all that's happened. And that eventually, there are a lot going on in the world, and so it's hard to make predictions about it, but eventually he's like that guy on the island who found another piece of gold. Now he's got the claim on other people's assets, but there are no more assets. So eventually you get a Zimbabwe situation where prices go way up and production goes way down.
Now, you used the technical analogy. You said basically we need to clear out all this debt. We need to clear out particularly the bad debt, clear that out. And you said that the economy sort of has a way of doing that every once in a while. Society has a way of purging that.
There has to be a way.
So you said what we need is a reboot. And I agree, but the thing is we also have a virus in the economy, and that would be the Federal Reserve,
Oh, yeah,
Treasury, all
yeah,
this
yeah.
bureaucracy.
Yeah.
We need to actually remove that virus before we do that reboot. Otherwise, we're going to have the same problem again, aren't we?
I have a feeling that the reboot will remove the virus.
You think so?
Because what it will do, it's not just money over the last 50 years. It's not just money and wealth and everything, but reputations and ideas.
Yeah.
And, Janet Yellen fully expects to retire from the Fed a hero, and she fully expects to collect $100,000 speaking fees, for years after. And that may not happen. It depends on when this reboot occurs. When the reboot occurs, it is like a forest fire. A forest fire are periodic ways of cleaning the dead wood out of the forest. When we get a forest fire, a kind of reboot or kind of depression or crash and all those things, a debt deflation you could call it, it's going to burn up a lot of assets that people thought they had, a lot of pretensions and vanities in the economics profession, including the idea that central banks can manage an economy by manipulating interest rates lower than the natural rate. That's not true, and we're going to see that it's not true. And I think that reboot will take care of the virus you're worried about, too.
I want to speculate a little bit with you, William, because you admitted that you'd been predicting trouble for quite a while, and we have seen a certain amount of trouble, and you're not alone. Many of us have been saying that. And I think where we all went wrong is that we looked at sort of our relationship with the government as kind of a static relationship. But what happens, it seems, is that life is resembling more and more like the movie The Matrix, where some of the rules can be bent, some of them can be broken altogether. The government seems to grab more power, like the Federal Reserve is grabbing more power, the regulatory regime is grabbing more power, and they're able to use that power to stall the consequences of what they're doing. So, for instance, on a gold standard, we would have had a meltdown a long time ago, and they've been loosening. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well,
Does that
I
make
think
sense?
that's a very good point, and it's very little understood, including by me. I don't understand it, but it is happening. That the government is taking more and more power, getting more and more authority, and the most recent expression of this is this move to take cash out of the society. Because if they can take the cash out of the society, then all of a sudden we're all prisoners of the banking system, which the government heavily regulates and controls. The banks are practically a public, they're a monopoly, but they're also a public, what do you call it?
Quasi-public utility.
Quasi-public utility, exactly. And so if you're forced to keep your money in the bank, then they can manipulate rates even more by forcing you, or just taking your money away, which I think they're going to do in Greece here very soon. They did in Cyprus. And just a negative interest rate is what they call it, a negative interest rate, but really it's a tax on your holdings in the bank, which makes you want to get rid of the holdings of the bank by spending them. So I think that's the next way in which they're going to try to control your activity.
I believe you're absolutely correct, and I think many people don't realize that one of the reasons Greece is melting down is because it's largely a cash economy, and so they don't have the same control. When I say they, I mean the government. They don't have so cash, euros are leaving on boats and all kinds of ways. They just don't have the control.
By the way, it's not just a cash economy, it's also a black market economy. There's a lot of things that happen there that in America or Canada wouldn't happen. Americans and Canadians don't know how to operate in an economy like that.
So
they
true.
have credit cards and they expect transactions to be above board. The Greeks are much more clever. They know that they can't trust the government, they can't trust the currency, and they always have cash in their pockets, cash in their mattresses, and they're ready. They're ready for it. That was what surprised me. I was just there, and I was surprised. They were on the actual brink of a total meltdown, and everything was calm. There were no lines in front of the ATM machines. The banks had been closed, but the ATMs were still open, and there were no lines. People were calm. The business went on as usual. People sitting in restaurants. Restaurants were full. It was very nice. But I talked to people then. They said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We've got that figured out. We've all got cash. We're ready to go."
Right, and an exit could be the best thing for them.
Yeah,
actually, right? Yeah. So I want to conclude just by talking to you about sort of your personal view on what's going on and what personal measures you've taken what do you think is prudent, and what have you done yourself to protect yourself from what you think is coming?
Well, I'm not a good model because I never quite get around to doing what I'm supposed to do. I do have a farm. I have a ranch in South America, and if trouble comes on schedule, I'll be able to get there. And once I get there, I'm perfectly all right because we have everything we need, including thousands of bottles of wine. So we'll be able to get through any sort of trouble. But I think that for the ordinary person or the average person, you just want to make sure you have enough cash on hand to be able to get through some time. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's a couple of months. I don't know how long it will take for the government to be able to get this printing presses working full speed, but I think you definitely want to do that, and you definitely want to make sure you're in a place you want to be, and you have neighbors that you trust. You don't want to be in a neighborhood where people will become desperate if all of a sudden the ATMs don't work or the Social Security checks don't come or something. You need to be in a solid community of people who are thinking about taking care of themselves.
Right.
In Switzerland, they had, I don't know if they still have, they had a rule that you needed to have 6 months of food. And I think the Mormon communities have that too, or maybe the Seventh-day Adventists. And those are sensible rules because you never know what's going to happen. And so if you're thinking about that kind of fear, that kind of worry, I think you should have cash and you should have food and you should be in a place that's basically safe. Beyond that, I think we all should be holding some gold because we don't know what will happen to the financial system, and historically gold is a good hedge against deflation, bankruptcy, hyperinflation, all kinds of calamities, of which I think we're going to see some.
So maybe perhaps a little bit of irony there. In 2015, basically looking at the same crisis that we've seen barreling down on us for 40 years, you're saying hold cash now.
I'm saying hold cash, yeah. Not too much cash, and not too long.
Not too much, not too long.
You want to have some.
I did an interview recently with investor Jayant Bhandari, and he said, in business, you increase your probability of success if you do business with rational and moral people. And perhaps you should just surround yourself with rational and moral people as a general rule. Okay, before we close, would you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? I know you have a newsletter now with Stansberry.
Yes,
right?
I'm writing a
newsletter.
For the first time in my life, I'm writing my own newsletter. And I'm doing it, I'm doing it because I feel like there are things that I want to say. I'm not really an investment advisor by any means. But what I do think a lot about the world of money and finance and economics, and I've thought about it for a long time, and so I think I have enough to offer to justify $49 or whatever it is.
No, absolutely, and I believe that's available at stansberryresearch.com.
Yes,
yeah. So I want to thank you very much for joining me. I really enjoyed your talk, and it's been just such a pleasure sitting down with you.
Well, thank you, Albert.
Yeah, and so we'll close now from the Sprott Stansberry Natural Resource Conference in Vancouver. This is Albert Liu. Please visit me at powerandmarket.com. Until next time, take care.